Good morning, everyone, and welcome to NorthBridge. If you're new and we haven't had the chance to meet yet, my name's James. I am the lead pastor here. And I want you to know that you picked a great Sunday to join us. We're kicking off a brand new series called Deeper, Wider. We're going to get to that in just a moment. But before that, I just want you to know we're going to be together for a little bit over an hour, and we're going to start things off by singing some songs. So why don't you stand? Get ready to sing. Give a wave and a smile to someone around you. Welcome them here. Then I'm going to hand it off to the band as they lead us in singing about the goodness, the greatness of our God, and His love for us that has no end.
Good morning. We're so excited to worship with you this morning. Please join and sing along with us. His love is deep, His love is wide, and it covers us. His love is fierce, His love is strong, He is furious. His love is sweet, His love is wild, it's waking hearts to life. Let's sing that again. His love is deep, His love is wide, and it covers us. His love is fierce, His love is strong, He is furious. His love is sweet, His love is wild, it's waking hearts to life. You all sound great. Nothing can tear us from the grip of His mighty love. We've only glimpsed His vast affection, heard whispers of His heart and passion is pouring down. His love is deep, His love is wide, and it covers us. His love is fierce, His love is strong, He is furious. His love is sweet, His love is wild, it's waking hearts to life. The Father loves and sends His Son. The Son lays down His life for all. Oh, He lavishes His love upon us. He calls us now His sons and daughters. He's reaching out. His love is deep, His love is wide, and it covers us. His love is fierce, His love is strong, He is furious. His love is deep, His love is wild, it's waking hearts to life. Yeah, love. His love is deep, His love is wide, and it covers us. His love is fierce, His love is strong, He is furious. His love is sweet, His love is wild, it's waking hearts to life. Oh, it's waking hearts to life. Yeah, waking hearts to life. Yeah. His love is deep, His love is wide, and it covers us. His love is fierce, His love is strong, He is furious. His love is sweet, His love is wild, it's waking hearts to life. Sound great this morning.
Let's continue to praise Him and thank Him for allowing us to build our lives with Him and live through Him and for Him. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me
Join me in prayer. Our Father in heaven, as we just sang, you are holy and there is no one like you. And our prayer as a church today is just that you would open up our eyes. Open up our eyes and wonder. Give us the eyes to see how you've just cared for us, how you love us, how you've blessed us individually and as a church. And I pray at the same time that you would give us the eyes to see those who don't know you, those who need you, and the eyes to see ways to reach them, whether it's through acts of service or things that we haven't even thought of or dreamt up before. Because your love for each and every one of us and each and every one of them is unfathomable. We thank you for it. And we pray these things in your name. And everyone said, amen. Amen. Is that my phone? I hear music going. Is it my phone? I'm playing along. Can you get that? Turn it up. Do I have to turn? I'm praying and there's music going on. It's cool. I don't know why, but that's cool. God's got another song for us to sing. Maybe next Sunday. I'll have to check out and see what it was. I'm usually like, whose phone's going off? Mine. Hey, welcome. If we haven't met yet, my name's James. I'm the lead pastor here. It's so good to have you with us on this Sunday. We're going to be starting a brand new series. I'm going to let you know a little bit more about that in just a moment. But before I do, I want to let you know about some stuff that's going on in and around the church. And if you have our app, you can follow along. Just open up your app right now. In fact, you'll be able to register for stuff and find out more. And if you don't have our app yet, there's a QR code on a seat around you. If you open up your camera app and scan that, it'll take you to a page where you can download our app or just track along with these three things that I'm going to be talking about. But the first is for those of you that are new. The first thing I want you to know is that we have an environment called Connect, and it's going to be happening next week during this service. It's a special environment that is for those of you that are new. Maybe today's your first Sunday. Connect would be a great step for you, or maybe you're new-ish. You've been around for a couple of weeks, a couple of months. We'd love to get to know you and give you an opportunity to get to know us. There's no ask or anything like that in Connect. It's not a membership class. It's super informal. We just want to help you get connected relationally. It's your best next step in making this church your church. So you'll get to meet some of the staff, hear the heart behind the church. I'll be there, answer any questions you have. I get to meet you, which is awesome. I can't wait. And you also will get to enjoy some breakfast snacks and stuff like that while we watch your kids for an hour, if that applies to you, that part. And so all we need you to do is register. You can do that through the app or that QR code. And then coming up in March, on March 9th, we're all losing an hour of sleep that morning. And so we're going to make it easy on parents. We're having pajama jam that day. All you got to do is roll them out of bed, get them in a car, and here. We'll have extra coffee. But we're also going to do something for a local nonprofit. While the kids are having their pajama jam parties, we're going to be collecting pajamas, new pajamas, for a local shelter here in Pittsburgh, Voice Women's Shelter. It's a way that we can assist them, not only the women that are there, but their family members, their children. And those of you online, thank you. We got messages this week that you're sending us pajamas to be a part of this. You want to be a part of this. And so just bring them with you on March 9th. You can find more about that in the details on the top 3 or the app. And then just a couple weeks after that, on March 15th, it's a Saturday morning, we are hosting a blood drive right here at NorthBridge in this room from 8 a.m. until 1 p.m., I believe. Vitalent is partnering with us. They're putting it all together. We just need to show up and be a part of it. And this really is important because there's a shortage here in the Pittsburgh area. All the donations will go to Pittsburghers and local Pittsburgh hospitals. So this is a way that you can be for Pittsburgh and literally share a life-giving gift to those here in this city that we love. It's important that you pre-register for this, not just so that we can know you're coming, but because this is one of those things where you're actually reserving a spot, kind of like a reservation at a table, except you're the one donating. And if you want to donate at 8 in the morning, then you need to reserve that spot, or 10 a.m. or at noon. And so it wouldn't bother us at all if you pulled out your phone right now and reserved your spot today to make sure that we are meeting the need around us and helping those in our city. And I think if you're using the code there, it's right on our app, but if you're using the one on the screen, I think we're short of 5. You need to add one more 5. It should be 5 at the end. I know some people were registering first service. So thanks for doing that in advance, and I'll look for you there. I'll be there all morning and donating myself as well. Right now, we're going to continue to worship by receiving the morning's offering. Ways that you can be a part of that are on the screen. And there's text to give and online giving, and you can set up recurring giving. But if you're old school, there's always a drop box at the back of the room if you'd like to use that. And as we take some time to give, I just want to thank you for your generosity, and I want to let you know that this series that we're about to get into is all about generosity. When we get into Deeper, Wider, this series is all about generosity. It's a generosity initiative for our church here locally and our network of churches. Now, as soon as I say that, some of you are like, man, did I pick the wrong Sunday to come, right? But you're in this far, so you might as well stay. I want you to know that there's nothing heavy-handed about this. There's no huge ask. And if it's your first Sunday, I think you picked a great Sunday to join us because our generous hearts overflow from all that God has done in the past and all that he is yet to do through our network of churches, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, and really through this church locally. So let me just start in the past. For those of you that are newish, you might not know much about our church. So just over about 17 years ago, it's hard for me to think that, but it's true. Just about 17 years ago, my family and I, along with good friend Jason Samuels and his family, along with a group of incredibly amazing volunteers, and the generosity of North Point Community Church out of Alpharetta, Georgia, all those things coming together, God leveraged to provide an opportunity for us to start NorthBridge Church just about 17 years ago. Our very first service was held September 23rd of 2007, and we met for the first 5 years in Haines School just down the road. We were the 12th church during that season that North Point Church had launched. They had this amazing heart to start churches like ours, that had a vision that unchurched people would love to attend a church like this, that we could inspire them to know Jesus and grow in their relationship with Jesus. And many of you have stories, your own stories, your family stories, your children or grandchildren of just how you've benefited from a church like this. And they just wanted to see that happen as best it could outside of the South, outside of the Atlanta region. So we were, beneficiaries of that, had our very first service. We were the 12th church that they launched back then. Today, there are over 100 network churches across America. Can we celebrate that? I mean, we were number 12, but there's like 100 now. And the network is now called the Irresistible Church Network because we want to create irresistible churches and irresistible environments because Jesus was irresistible. If you open up the Gospels, even if you've never done it before, you look at the Gospel of John, for instance, the one thing that you will see without any kind of Bible study or anything, it's right there, is the people that were least like Jesus loved being around Jesus because he was irresistible. And he loved being around them. And his church should be like that. So over 100 of us here nationally, and there's over 116 of us in addition to that internationally. Can we celebrate that? Absolutely incredible. And all around the world, in fact, I learned this week, I didn't know this, we have 2 churches in Cuba. Think about that. Now, they're smaller churches. They're flying under the radar, but we have 2 churches in our network in Cuba. I also learned that their lead pastors make $9 a month. That's their salary. And if you don't know much about Cuba, it's just incredible, incredible poverty. And in the midst of that, one of those churches wanted to do Be Rich like we do Be Rich in September, where you ask everybody to give and you give it away to local nonprofits. And, North Point and some of our churches were like, maybe you shouldn't do Be Rich. I mean, you're getting $9 a month. Like, let us be rich towards you. And they're like, no. Followers of Jesus give and they're generous towards others. So they did Be Rich this past fall with the rest of us. Just absolutely incredible what God is doing. But we don't want to just, kind of rest and get, comfortable and just coast as a network of churches. We're really looking towards the future and asking God what's next. And so I want to talk about that in a moment. But before we do, I want to take Andy up on his advice that he gave us last week. And he ended our series last week and he kind of said, every once in a while you got to pause, you got to look back, and you just got to have gratitude and give God thanks for all that he's done. So we've got a video that kind of sums up our church history in 3 minutes. And for those of you that are new or newish, this is going to bring you up to speed. Let's look back together and celebrate all that God has done.
Let me tell you a story. A story about a community of people whose lives have been changed forever. In 2006, two youth pastors had a dream of creating a different kind of church. A church that would be passionate about reaching the community. A church where everyone would know they were welcomed, no matter what their story was. Little did they know what would happen next. Their dream, it grew beyond anything they could have imagined and inspired many others to dream with them. This group began to gather with the goal of turning their dream into a reality. Days and weeks and months were spent learning the best way to start a church like this and learning from others who had gone before them. Soon, a meeting place was found, and on September 23rd, 2007, NorthBridge Community Church had its very first service.
Just about to take possession of our trailers and set up for the very, very first time.
For 5 years, faithful volunteers gave their time to show up before sunrise and stay late to create excellent environments every Sunday. With dedicated hands and hearts, they set up and tore down every piece of church week after week. Adults were shaped by the messages they heard, and the truth they applied to their lives, it began to change their marriages, families, friendships, and workplaces. They engaged in intentional community with each other to be known, encouraged, and challenged by application. Children were given an environment where they learned that Jesus loves them and wants to be their friend. Students were given a place where they could explore faith in Jesus and be influenced by adults who wanted them to have a strong foundation for the next phase of their lives. This church, it continued to grow, and in 2012, NorthBridge was able to purchase a permanent facility. This space created opportunity for more influence in the community and more chances to introduce people to the hope of Jesus. Since NorthBridge began, not a week has gone by where there wasn't a story of someone who's taken a step in their growing relationship with Jesus Christ. Adults and children have publicly shared their decision to follow Jesus through baptism. Hundreds of individuals continue to invest their time in the lives of others, trusting God to use their gifts and availability. They've given generously to our communities so that the people of Pittsburgh would know there is a God who is for them. There is a church who is for them. Today, we continue to be that church, a church that unchurched people love to attend, where everyone is invited and everyone is included, and where people can encounter a God who loves them and is for them. It's always been about people. This is our part in a story that will last for generations to come. It's the story of our community. It's the story of the church. It's the story of Jesus.
It's pretty crazy. Krista leaned over and said, "You were a baby." I was. And I imagine many of you have memories. You've been a part of it. You have memories, you have stories, your children, maybe your grandchildren at this point. I encourage you to share them today with others and throughout this series as we move forward. And that's the key. We're moving forward. We, as an individual church and as a network of churches, we don't just want to coast. We don't want to become complacent. In fact, if you were here in January, our very first message of this year was made for more. And as we get into our 18th year, which we'll celebrate in September, we wanted to start 2025 by asking the question, God, what is the more that you created us for? And we've been talking about that when it comes in terms of like, how can we serve and be a part of the local church? How can we live for God with all of our heart, soul, and mind? And when it comes to the future of this church and all the resources that God's given us, we need to ask that question again and say, God, what is the more that you've made us for? And so our network of churches has set a goal that we want to take the 100 churches that are now in our network nationally, which is incredibly, just amazing and crazy to think about. By the year 2035, we want to see that number reach 350 churches here nationally, which goes with 2035. It's a pretty big goal. But the reason that we want to do it is, again, we don't want to coast. We don't want to just, be satisfied and say, well, look, we've done all this stuff. The reason that we want to do it is because there's so many people around the U.S., I mean millions of people, that don't know who Jesus is yet. When you think just about here in Cranberry, I mean there's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people, our friends, our neighbors, our coworkers that do not know Jesus. I mean, they might know a little bit about Jesus, but they don't have a relationship with Jesus. They don't know him as Lord, Savior, as King. And that's just here in Cranberry. And more are moving in every week, if you haven't noticed, as you drive here on Sunday morning. They can't build houses fast enough, right? But what about your community? So many of us don't live here in Cranberry Township. The thousands upon thousands of people, your friends, family members, coworkers that don't know Jesus, that should matter to us. It should matter to our network. I want you to look around this room, not at me. Look around the room just for a second. Seriously, look around the room. You'll probably notice an empty seat or two. I hope that would bother you. I hope that it would bother us. It certainly bothers me. And it's not because the room's not full. That's not why it bothers me. Every Sunday, an empty seat just reminds me of a person who's not here yet that I know, or that one of you know, that doesn't know Jesus yet. And we started this church for them, just like we started it for so many of you that have benefited from it. And so we should never become complacent, and we should never take our foot off the gas. We should always be saying, what is the more that you created us for? Individually, but yet collectively as a church and as a network of churches. And that number, 350, it's not just about the year 2035. It's very strategic. The U.S. has a whole bunch of communities with like 50,000 people in them, which sounds like a lot until you Google it. And 50,000 people is like an average size large community in the U.S. Forget cities, communities. Our goal is to have a church like ours within a half an hour driving distance of everybody who would live in one of those communities by 2035. And looking at where we're geographically placed, where we are currently, that's where the number 350 came up with, because it was like we could strategically place them that we could hit that goal, that everybody in America in a community that size by 2035 would have a church like one of ours. And that's something to get excited about when we think about the people we love and care about that might not live around here, but they could live near a church just like this that we could invite them to, that we could refer them to. So that's really what this campaign is about, the future's about. It's about the next generation and things that we are yet to do here at NorthBridge, which each and every one of you and our youth and children will benefit from. But it's also about, and you'll hear about this in the next couple of weeks, some stuff that we are doing here in the Pittsburgh area that goes geographically beyond Pittsburgh, geographically beyond Cranberry, which is very, very exciting, but I can't tell you about that yet this morning, so you're going to have to stay tuned. We're just getting started. So here's Andy with the rest. If I understand right, this is live. We're going to be picking them up right after they watch their celebration video, and because this is all of our network of churches, they might have some printed material and stuff like that that we're not going to have. We're all applying it differently, but the meat of the message and the goal is all the same. God, what is the more you created us for, and what do you have for us to do as we look towards the future that would be all for you and your glory?
Yeah, I've seen that 10 times and I still cry. So anyway, hey, thanks for joining us, all of our Atlanta area churches, those of you who are joining us from all over the country and literally all over the world. And if you're joining us from all over the country and all over the world, I'm especially glad that you're tuning in today, because you are part of the reason that we're doing what we're doing. We're kicking off a generosity initiative across all of 8 of our Atlanta area churches. As you just saw, we're calling it Deeper Wider, many of you have heard about this and gotten some details. For others of you, this is the first time you're hearing about it. But the goal in the Deeper Wider Generosity Initiative is to maximize our kingdom impact as a collection of churches locally, nationally, and globally. And when you leave here today, you're going to get this Deeper Wider vision guide that's going to give you all the details, most of the details in terms of what this includes, what we want to accomplish. It's a big scope that you heard on the video. It really is an audaciously big goal. I'm not even sure it's possible, but we decided to attempt something that might be impossible, and that is okay. Now here's the thing. If you haven't been here for very long, here's something you need to know about our collection of churches. What you have accomplished and what we've accomplished together really is amazing. I mean, 8 amazing churches in the Atlanta area, one of the most important cities in the United States, 70,000 active people. That's not a mailing list. These are people who are active in one of our 8 Atlanta churches, plus 200 churches in our network. Southside churches, you're tuning in today. You're part of that. You're an extension of what we do and mirror what we do. And we learn as much from you as maybe you learn from us. Athens Church. And then there are not only about 100 churches in the United States, but about 116 churches spread out across the globe that run our model, learn from us, take advantage of what we provide for them, because they want to create outward facing churches, not just in their cities, but in their country. And collectively, that's about 500,000 people that are impacted on a weekly basis because of what you do. But maybe as amazing as all of that is this. It's been 20 years since we've done any kind of fundraising with our entire organization. And here's how this works, and I understand this. You show up at your local church, whichever church you attend, you give money to that local church, and you look around and you think, hey, I hope that the money I'm giving is gonna help us do what we do here and support my family and all those kinds of things. And through the years, we've taken the small percentage of what we don't use locally, and we have invested in what we have been able to do nationally and globally. And while we've done a lot, and this is gonna kind of explain a little bit of some of that a lot. We don't talk about that a lot because on Sunday morning, we're busy talking about what's going on at the local campus, right? While we've done a lot, there is so much more we can do. And I'm convinced this is the season, not only can we do it, but we must do it, we ought to do it. So I'm asking all of you at all of our Atlanta area churches, all of you at our network churches, all of you who watch online to engage with us in this initiative, to leverage our collective generosity in order to maximize our kingdom impact. You are making a kingdom impact locally and nationally and globally, whether you knew that or not. But I want us to put our foot on the gas and maximize our potential. But to do that, that's going to require all of us to maximize our personal generosity to this initiative. And here's the thing. This is what I want you to hear, for some of you especially. We're not doing this because your church needs your money. This isn't about your church needing your money. This is about the world needing your influence. Our nation and our world need more churches like your church. And what you are doing is working here, and what you're doing is working there. And entrepreneurial church leaders all over the country and all over the world want in. And we want to throw those doors open wide to include them, to create more outward-facing churches in the United States and in the world, along with some other things that are so exciting. A lot of that is right here. And think of it this way. If you're watching online, or maybe you have friends that watch online, but if you're watching online and you've ever thought, wow, I wish there was a church like this church. I'm at North Point today, or at Buckhead Church. If you visited Buckhead Church, or you're watching the Buckhead Church online stream, or any of our online streams, or you have visited Atlanta and one of our churches and you thought to yourself, I wish there was a church like this in our area. We do too. But we're not just gonna wish there was. We're gonna do everything in our power to ensure there is. In fact, one of the exciting initiatives that you can read about is we would like to create an outward-facing church in every single community in the United States of 50,000 people or more, so that everybody and every child and every college student and every single adult and every middle schooler and every high schooler could experience the kind of environments that your kids experience, because we wanna set the anchor deep in their hearts, and when they tend to stray, they won't be able to stray far, because we have anchored them to the actual first century version of what it means to follow Jesus. Now, if all this talk about money makes you nervous, I understand that. But here's what I want you to hear. So hear me out. 30 years ago, I was in front of a much much smaller group of people, and I asked them to give generously to an experiment. It was an experiment. We had no members, we had no money, we had no property. We just had an idea. And that experiment, because of their generosity, became the church you are currently seated in. And I know those people. Sandra and I are some of those people. And we are so grateful we said yes. And we gave sacrificially, and I don't miss the money, and I would not go back and undo that decision if my life depended on it, because of what I have seen and what we have seen God do. And here's the thing. We're grateful, and 5 years from now, it's a 2-year campaign with a 5-year investment. 5 years from now, thousands of men, women, students, and children, thousands will be grateful for you because of what you are about to do. Now, the other reason you don't have to get weird or feel weird about the preacher up here talking about money and asking you to give to a generosity campaign is this. People who have embraced, and many of you are here, you get what I'm about to say. People who have embraced what Jesus taught about money, and people who have embraced as a lifestyle what Jesus said about possessions would tell you they are never going back. And as one of those, I would tell you I would never, ever go back. And Sandra and I are so fortunate that we were raised in homes and raised in churches that understood tithing and understood first and best giving and understood the value of investing in what God's doing in a community and in the world. And we just want those of you who have never experienced that because of fear, because of debt, because of whatever reason, because of you can't trust the church and all the stories you hear, we want you to engage. And I'm telling you, you will never meet a follower of Jesus who allowed their money to follow Jesus and his kingdom who regrets that. So you don't have to be nervous about this. We don't have to be weird about this. This is just one more opportunity to follow Jesus. Now, all of that begins with the whole idea of following Jesus with our money, the whole idea of what it means to be a steward or a follower of Jesus with our possessions and everything. It all comes back to one simple idea. And today, for a few minutes, I just want to introduce that one simple idea. For some of you, this might be review. For some of you've heard this before, but you've sort of drifted from it. I get that. For some of you, this may be a novel idea or a first time you've heard about it. And at the end, I'm going to ask you to spend a week thinking about it, but not doing anything about it. There's no real application for today's message other than a thought exercise. But it all goes back to acknowledging and applying one simple truth. King David said it first, and then King Jesus came along and reiterated it later. And King David made this statement or sort of exported or teased out this truth during a prayer that he prayed. And we're going to look at the part of that prayer in just a minute. But here's the one statement from King David's prayer all those years ago that kind of says it all. Here's what he said in a prayer to God. He said, everything in heaven and earth is yours. Everything in heaven and earth, he said, God, is yours. In other words, God, you own it all. And we are just managers, and we are simply temporary stewards of it. So here's the context of this prayer. It's kind of interesting. King David was in probably his mid to late 50s. He had settled all the border disputes around the ancient kingdom of Israel. So there was peace in the land. And he decided it was time for God, Yahweh, to have his own temple. All the pagans, the religions in the world, they had temples. And God, Israel's God, Yahweh, lived in a tent. They call it a tabernacle. And it had been a tent or a tabernacle since the days of Moses that required a lot of maintenance and a lot of fixing up because, again, it wasn't a permanent structure. So David decides, I'm going to build God a permanent structure. And so before he goes to work, a prophet came to see him named Nathan. And the prophet Nathan said to David, God spoke to me. And David, a couple of things. First of all, God's not asking for a building because he's the mobile God. He doesn't need a building. He's not tied to a piece of geography. But he appreciates the sentiment. But you can't build God the temple because you're the king. You're the warrior king. There's too much blood on your hands. So your son can build the temple, but you can't build it. And David accepted no as an answer, but then he decided to go to work and collect all the raw materials for this extraordinary structure that later his son Solomon would build. And this is why the first temple in Jerusalem was called Solomon's temple. So he goes to work to get all the raw materials, because this is going to be an extraordinary building campaign, or not campaign, but a building enterprise. So he begins to pull all the materials together, and he personally funds out of his own wealth the first round of materials. And then he announces his intention to all the influencers in the city of Jerusalem and all the influencers in the region, the military leaders, the city council, the wealthy families, the people who have influence, government officials. And he says to all of them, I want us to build our God a temple, and it needs to be magnificent. And the text tells us that when he made this announcement, that they gave willingly, because as you read the story, they saw this as an opportunity to participate in something grand and glorious for their God, and they didn't want to miss out. And then as the influence people, the influencers in the community began to give toward this project, then the common folk came along, and they're like, well, we don't want to miss out either. And these were the people that had very, very little extra. But the text says when the common people, the poorer people, saw their leaders giving generously to this project, the text says that the people rejoiced at the willing response of their leaders, for they had given freely and wholeheartedly to the Lord. So there's this outpouring of generosity toward this project in a way to honor God. So as all of this is happening, David is so overwhelmed by the generosity of the people and the generosity of the nation that he gathers the leaders and he gathers as many people as he could, and to launch this project of bringing together all the resources necessary, the money necessary to buy the resources. He prays a prayer, and the chronicler recorded this prayer, and I want to read you a part of this prayer because it's so right on the nose in terms of the posture of anyone who trusts God, and especially in our generation, anyone who follows Jesus. It just explains so clearly how we are to view our wealth, view our income, view our potential, and view our potential collectively as it relates to furthering God's kingdom in the world. And embedded in this prayer really is the posture that I hope all of us will adopt during this season of our church. Here's what David prays. I'm just going to read it to you and maybe make a few comments. He says this. He says, yours, Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the majesty and the splendor. And the reason is, he says, because everything in heaven and earth is yours. It all belongs to you. Anytime you see splendor and glory or greatness in a person or in nature or anywhere, that's all a manifestation of the greatness and the glory and the splendor of God. And then he says this, yours, Lord, and this is coming from a king. This is so unusual for a king to say something like this, even now. Yours, Lord, is the kingdom. In other words, it's not even my kingdom. I'm the king, but I'm smart enough to know it's not my kingdom because everything belongs to you. Yours, Lord, is this kingdom, and you are exalted as head over all. I might wear the crown, but we are not confused. We know who the head of this nation is. It is yours. It's your kingdom. It is not mine. And then listen to this. It's so powerful. If this was front and center the way we lived our lives. He says, wealth and honor, position, recognition, wealth and honor, we know they come from you. And you are the ruler of all things. In other words, David says, look, I'm not confused. I have what I have because you gave it to me for a time. And this is true of me as well. And this is true of all of you as well. All of us who have extra, all of us have extra because God allowed us to manage the extra, whether it's position or influence or stuff or just extra money, the money that we save, the extra, we don't live hand to mouth, that ultimately this came from God. And yes, I'm not ignoring the fact that you worked really hard, and you took advantage of those opportunities that came your way. I mean, how many times have you told your story or you've heard the story? It's like I was going along doing my thing and then an opportunity came my way. And if you're a theist, if you believe in God, if you're a Christian, when that opportunity came your way, your instinct was to say, thank you, God, for this opportunity that came my way. And you leveraged it and you took advantage of it and you worked really hard and God honored your work. So yes, you had a role to play, but ultimately we're smart enough to not be confused either, to know that ultimately we don't control the future and we don't control the variables. We took advantage of those opportunities. And David saw what some people in his culture miss. And David saw what unfortunately many people in our culture miss. That there are just too many variables to ever be arrogant. There are just too many variables, too many things that are out of our control to ever take credit, even for our hard work and taking advantage of the opportunities that come our way. That our success and our prosperity, yes, it's a result of some things we did, but ultimately we're smart enough to know we didn't determine our health. We didn't determine where we were born. We didn't determine when we were born. We didn't determine who we were born to. We didn't determine what it was in us that gave us the drive to work our way out of the environment we were born into. There are just too many variables that there's never any need. There's never any room for arrogance. That ultimately, to put it bluntly, arrogance is a reflection of ignorance. Arrogance says, I'm too ignorant to understand that I don't control the variables that have allowed me to be as successful as I am. And David is declaring before the whole nation, I'm not confused. I know why I'm the king. I know why I have this position. And I know why I have the margin I do to build this temple for God. Then he says this, he says, in your hands are strength and power to exalt and to give strength to all. In other words, again, he's acknowledging publicly, I am the king only because you chose me to be the king. That I did not choose myself or create this opportunity for myself. And maybe in this moment or leading up to this prayer, he thinks back to how he became the king. And some of you, if you grew up in church, we remember this story. That God says to the prophet Samuel, I'm done with this king. We're going to have a new king. I want you to go to Jesse's house. And I want you to get all of his sons together. Jesse had a bunch of sons. And I'm going to choose the next king of Israel from Jesse's sons. You remember this amazing story? We teach our children this. It's extraordinary. So the prophet Samuel goes to Jesse's home and says, Jesse, I've got some good news for you. There's going to be a dynasty change. And you're going to be the father of the king. Gather your sons. And God is about to choose one of your sons to be the next king of Israel. Remember this story? And so still all the sons come out, and Eliab, the oldest, he's tall, he's kingly, he's strong. And Samuel's like, easy, this is the guy. And God says, no. He goes to the next one, no. And the prophet's like, Jesse, this awkward question, do you have any more sons? Because God says none of these guys are it. Remember the story? And Jesse's like, well, there's one other guy, we didn't even invite him. It can't possibly be him. David, he's just taking care of the sheep. Surely, there's king material. Samuel says, I won't leave till you bring him. And then walks David. And God says, that's the guy. Samuel's like, this is it. David knew this. He was smart enough not to forget. He was smart enough to remember. He was smart enough to keep front and center. There are too many variables in life to take credit for our success, for our wealth, for our extra, for our margin, for our opportunity, that everything in the heavens and earth, including opportunity, wealth and strength and honor, come from God and from God alone. And if we have any, the correct posture is gratitude and humility. And here's how you know that's true. Because when you meet successful people who are humble and are quick to give credit to the people around them, and ultimately quick to give credit to God, you are moved by that, and you are impressed by that, and you are inspired by that, because you know they, with all their success, they are not confused. And then this. Again, he tips his hat to yet another posture for us to live by. In fact, this is the posture to live by that I just want to promise you that if you assume this posture, you will always be glad you did. And if you don't assume this posture, you'll look back and, well, you wish you had. Here's what he says. This is amazing. He's like, but who am I? But who am I? He's thinking about, he's the king, he's got all this opportunity, he's got this wealth, he's got this, but who am I? Why me? Why me? And then he extends it to the nation. But who am I? And who are my people? Who are we? Who am I and who are we that we should be able to give as generously as this? He asked the question that every honest, wealthy person asks at some point along the way. Why me and why not them? Why me and why not them? And because we live in a world where we know what's happening in the world globally and economically, you have all had that thought. You've all asked that question in your own way. You look at what's happening in the world. You go on a global X trip. You meet with people who just don't have the opportunities we have and don't have the wealth that we have. And again, in so many cases, they're hand to mouth and they have so much joy. But at the same time, you can't help but wonder, this is the honest question, why me? Who am I? Why us? Who are we? And again, this was a culture where most people literally lived hand to mouth. When Jesus said, you give us this day our daily bread, that was a literal prayer because food didn't keep. There was grain and there was wine. Everything else pretty much spoiled. So daily bread meant daily bread. And if you ran out of grain or if there was a famine or if the harvest didn't come in, entire villages would starve. And David is saying, we actually have extra, but why us? Why us and why my people? Because he was saying what you all are doing, talking about his kingdom, what you're doing to support this initiative, many people couldn't do because they don't have extra. You've honored us to be those, he says, who can. Who are we? Who am I? That God would randomly choose us. Again, I know you come on a Sunday, you show up on a Sunday, or you participate in a small group. Many of you, thousands of you serve, and you see a little bit of the ministry that our churches are doing. But as somebody who's in charge of this whole amazing thing, and I look at the impact, and it's not me, the impact that we have had, it is overwhelming and it is amazing. And it is easy to be humble because our best ideas weren't my ideas. In fact, every once in a while, somebody will hear about our organization, they'll say, Andy, was this your vision? And I always answer the same way. I say, we passed my vision at year 5. After year 5, it's all been, are you kidding me? Okay. So I am the most amazed and I am the most grateful. And I ask this question, God, why me and why us and why this opportunity? Because everything belongs to you and everything comes from you. That is the posture to live with. That is the posture you never regret. And you know what else that does? That is the posture that keeps your hands open for God to give and to take. Because at the end of the day, you say with John the Baptist, a man or a woman can only receive what is given to them from heaven. That's part of my prayer every single day. And then David continues and he says this, everything comes from you. And then again, this is amazing. Everything comes from you, and we have, look at this, and we have given you only what comes from your hand. Lord our God, he says, all this abundance, all this extra, all this margin, all this beyond our daily bread and beyond our daily needs, all of this abundance that we have provided for building you a temple, for your holy name, comes from your hand, and all of it belongs to you. Again, he's saying, we are not confused. We're not confused. We are not giving you anything. We're simply giving it back to you because ultimately it came from you. When this idea goes from your head to your heart, it is a game changer, not just in terms of your money and your possessions. This is a game changer in terms of our entire lives. I can attest to that. And I've seen that play out in my life. I've seen that play out in the lives of so many people. Now, to be clear, okay, we're not building a temple, all right? That's the good news. This is not a capital campaign. You know, capital campaign, you've all been a part of those where an organization's gonna build a thing, so you give your money to build the thing, or they're gonna buy a thing, or you're gonna start a thing, so you give. This is way broader than that. We are positioning ourselves to maximize our ability to be conduits through which Jesus continues to build his church, because he promised he's going to do it anyway, and we have been invited to participate in it, to enlarge his kingdom, to expand his reign and his rule in the hearts and the lives of men, women, students, teenagers, senior adults, every kind of person in every nation in the world. And this is what we've been doing for the last 30 years. But to maximize our collective impact, we have to maximize our personal generosity. And to maximize our generosity, here's the thing. We can't think like owners who donate to the church. And if that has been your mindset, I want to challenge you, at least in these next few weeks as we talk about this, I want to challenge you to try to begin thinking differently. You are not an owner who has some money and who has some wealth, and occasionally or even systematically, you're going to donate to the church. That's not going to get us there. We have got to embrace this mindset that is introduced in the Old Testament, that Jesus reiterated in the New Testament, that we are simply managers and stewards, that everything belongs to God. And for whatever reason, he has allowed us to have extra for the benefit of his kingdom, that we have to adopt the posture of a manager. And when you do, three things are going to happen, and I'll wrap this up. Here's three promises. When you begin to think this way, when this becomes the mindset, when this becomes the framework, number one, you will view everything you own, not just cash and not just a percentage. You will view everything you own as a potential tool to further the agenda of your king. Your kitchen table, your dining room table, your unfinished basement, your finished basement, your backyard, that extra car, a vacation home, whatever it is, you'll begin to see, wait a minute, this isn't about giving money to a church. This is about everything I own is a potential tool to maximize God's influence in the world and to expand the kingdom of God. And again, many of you have experienced this, because hundreds and hundreds of you at all of our campuses and at all of our network churches, you have opened your home to small groups to meet in your home. You've leveraged your house. You've leveraged your basement. You've leveraged an extra bedroom. You've leveraged your home for middle schoolers and high schoolers. And some of you are real Christians. You opened your home to middle school boys and high school boys, and it's like, oh my goodness, and it's like, how long will it smell? Anyway, so the point is, many of us, we understand this. It's not just cash, it's not just money. If everything belongs to God, and I begin to view everything as a tool that God uses to expand his kingdom through me, that is a game changer. You know what else will happen? And I'm not being critical of anybody in particular. You got to figure this out for yourself. You're going to collect fewer collectibles. And you're going to begin to liquidate things that aren't doing anybody any good. Not because it's a sin to have those things. I'm just telling you, when you adopt this mindset, you see all of that differently. And you'll never go back and you'll never regret it. Number two, you'll give first and adjust your lifestyle accordingly. You will give first and adjust your lifestyle accordingly. This is not new. I've been teaching this for 30 plus years to all of you. You've heard me every once in a while. I come back to it. Give, save, live. Give, save, live. You give first, you save second, you live on the rest. You give first, you fund God's kingdom, you save second, you fund your own kingdom, and then you live on the rest. You give, you save, you live. We teach our kids this. We've used jars, we've used apps. We want our kids to grow up giving first, living, saving second, and then living on the rest. You'll think in terms, when you adopt this mindset that I'm not an owner, I'm a manager, you will adopt a first and best mindset rather than leftover and last. Most Americans give leftover and last. Don't be most Americans. Leftover and last means I've financed my kingdom. I got everything I want for now, and they need some money. So what can I afford to give? This is not about what can you afford to give. You just need to erase that mindset. That's not what we're talking about. What can I afford to give? And what can I afford to give right now? That's how most people think, but that's not how stewards think. That's not how managers of God's wealth and margin and money think. They think differently than that. So it's not leftover and last. It's first and it's best. It's give, save, live on the rest. And then the third thing that's going to happen, and I could spend a lot of time on this, and I'll try not to. And I couldn't decide whether or not to say this, but I'm just gonna say it, and please take it within the context that I mean it. This is kind of a guy thing a little bit. Now, I know men and women both wrestle with, stuff and money and possessions, and I get that. But this next thing that'll happen, and maybe it's just my experience in talking to men and about their money and their possessions. But here's the thing. If you flip the script and even just begin to think, don't do anything. Just begin to think in terms of, okay, I am a manager and a steward. I'm not an owner because everything belongs to God. When you flip the script, here's what's going to happen. I promise. You're going to find it easier to surrender your entire life to your King. I have in my mind this video. I don't know if anybody's ever made this, but I imagine somebody being baptized, and as they're going down, they're holding their wallet up out of the water, and then they come back up like, okay, you can have all of me, but you can't have this. The reason I say that is this. Listen up. We are all inclined, not just men, we're all inclined. We are all inclined to equate wealth, income, and our stuff with our personal value. We're all inclined to equate or to conflate and to get mixed up about the fact that what we have and what we drive and where we live and how much money we have in the bank and when we can retire, we have a tendency to equate that with our identity. So here's the challenge. So giving up control of your money, and here's why I say control of your money. When you decide to give first, that feels like you're giving up control of your money. Before I know what's going to happen this month, I'm going to give first. When giving up control of our wealth feels like we are giving up control or losing control of our lives. That's what it feels like. Because we equate our money and our possessions and our lifestyle with our lives. And this is amazing. And Jesus saw us coming. And he says, hey, let me ask you a question. And I'm going to give you the Jesus question. And we all know the right answer. And then Jesus is going to say, well, since you know the right answer, why don't you live that way? But here's the question. He saw us coming. He says, okay, I get that whole identity thing and, what people think, and you equate what you have with money. But come on, guys. Come on, ladies and gentlemen. Is not life more than what you eat, what you wear? That's what he said. Here's what I say. Isn't life more than what you drive and where we vacation and how much we've saved and when we can retire and how much we accumulate and how much we're going to leave our kids? Isn't life more than all that? To which we would say, oh, yeah, but, and Jesus is like, I'm not done. Let me say it in a different way. He's so brilliant. He says, by worrying about how much you make, didn't make, should make, could make, how much they make, by worrying about all this, by thinking about all this, by kind of measuring your progress in life by, what you don't make, should make, could make, and how much they make. He says, by worrying about that, here's his actual version. By worrying about all that, does it add hours to your life? In other words, this is so brilliant. By worrying about all that, does it add to life? In other words, if you've equated your life with all this stuff accidentally, but worrying about all that stuff and having all that stuff does nothing to extend your life. In fact, worrying about it might subtract hours from your life. Then Jesus says, come on, obviously your life isn't any of that. So quit living like it is. He says to me, and he says to all of us, here's the thing, then I'm done. Whatever we equate with life, savings, things, grades, where you go to school, professional success, whatever you equate with life, we will cling to as if our lives depend on it. This is why we cling to our stuff. This is why the whole idea of pre-deciding to give feels like I'm out of control because I'm losing my life. It's why we worry. We're confused. And Jesus would like to unconfuse all of us. You'll find it easier to surrender your entire life to your King when you acknowledge and begin to live as if you are a manager and not an owner. When you take off the owner hat like King David and say, okay, I'm not confused. I'm the king. I didn't make myself king. I got all this extra opportunity. That all came from you. I am managing it for a time. Here's the thing. We cannot, this is why this third point, there's so much to say, I'll keep moving. We cannot surrender to our actual king. Men, let me just talk to us a second. Men, we cannot, it's not that we don't want to. It's not that we don't try. We cannot surrender to our actual king until we dethrone the imposter king. And Jesus knew that our attitude and approach to wealth management, and wealth accumulation was going to be the number, he says this, we'll talk about it in a couple of weeks, is going to be the number one competitor with who rules and reigns in our life. And I'm just telling you, show me a man who's dealt with this and has surrendered all of this to King Jesus, and I will show you a man who will never go back to living the other way, and who has more peace, and who probably has more prosperity, because he's redefined what prosperity really is. So this week, here's your assignment. I just want you to practice thinking like managers, okay? So this is gonna be kind of fun because you don't have to do anything. Now, and don't get in the car and honey, that's what I've been saying. Don't do that, okay? Well, see, because one of you, come on, I know how it is. The less generous person marries the not so generous, the more generous person. Somebody wants to give away everything. The person's like, if I let him do, if I let her, we're not gonna, I get it. You're dating that person and it's like, yeah, don't have that conversation. This is a thought exercise you're gonna do individually. We'll have conversations later. I just want you this week to think, okay, what would I do in this situation if I really thought about myself as a manager, not an owner? What would I do in this situation as you face different conflicts or tension as it relates to finances or planning or whatever it might be, or just stuff in your home or stuff that's not in your home? What if I really thought in terms of I'm not an owner, I'm a manager? What would it look like if you really believed and embraced the idea that everything in heaven and earth is his? What would that look like? What would that change? What kind of tension does that create in you? I want you to pay attention to that tension and do the exercise. And we'll pick it up right there in part 2 of Deeper, Wider.
Deeper, wider. I know a series like this and a message like this kind of raises up all kinds of emotions. And for some of you, it's an emotion of tension, right? Like, oh, here we go. We're talking about money. And I just want you to know, this is really good news. We did not lock the doors while that message was going on, and all of a sudden we're going to pass the buckets and have an offering. We're not doing anything like that today. In fact, those books that Andy had that said Deeper, Wider at the beginning of his portion of the message, we don't even have those to hand out to you. And the reason is, that's for our main campuses. Just like they were instrumental and incredibly generous in launching us as a church here in Pittsburgh, they're going to do a majority of the heavy lifting when it comes to that goal of we want to have 350 churches by 2035. And so that's something that they're dealing with. What they're asking us to do is to pray and consider, what does God want for us here as NorthBridge Church when it literally comes to our church? And what about the surrounding area of Pittsburgh? Because I know there's many of you that drive well over a half an hour to get here on Sunday morning, and it amazes me every week when I see you out in the lobby, the time that you're putting in, the commute to get here and go home, and you're serving, and you're here for an hour and attending for an hour. But I also know that that's not all of your friends and neighbors. They're not willing to do that. So what can we do to help reach this goal of a church within reasonable driving distance and stuff? We're going to talk about all that stuff in the upcoming weeks, okay? So you're not going to want to miss any of it. I can't encourage you enough to be here because God has something that he desires for you. But we've got to get started where Andy left us. If something is welling up inside of you, just be honest with yourself this week and go, what's getting in the way of this idea of my wanting to be owner versus God's desire for me to be manager? What's getting in the way of that? What's causing the tension? And what can you do to go before God this week and say, God, open up my heart, open up my mind, give me a desire to come under your authority, under your kingship as a manager, because after all, you do own it all. That's all we're asking you to do today. And we're asking you to all come back next week because you are not going to want to miss all that God has in store as this church goes into the future and says, what can we do to be deeper, wider? And how can we answer the question of, God, what is the more you've created us for?
Let me pray for us. Father, I thank you for this series. I thank you for an incredible Sunday where we just get to, see all our friends, old and new. We get to celebrate and look back in gratitude on all that you've done, and we also get to eagerly anticipate what you are yet to do. And so I pray that you would fill our hearts and minds with gratitude, but also eager anticipation for what you are to show us to and lead us to, and that you would give us faith, that you will continue to lead, guide, and provide all along the way. As we take this week apart until we meet again, I just pray that you would continue to work in our hearts and minds when it comes to this attitude of owner versus manager, and you would lead us, each and every one of us, exactly where we're at, that you would meet us there and lead us into our ever-growing relationship with you, Jesus, our risen Savior and King. And everyone said, amen. Hey, thanks so much for joining us. And again, if you're new, thank you so much for being here, taking time out of your Sunday. We'd love to get to know a little bit about you. Next week we have Connect. And so, if you're able to do that during this service, we'd love to kind of enjoy some donuts and snacks and just get to know you, introduce you to some of the staff. If you can't do that, another way that we can just get to know each other is you just simply send us a text. And the word is welcome, and the number's on the screen, 724-414-2585. If you do that before you leave, it'll help us, stay in contact. And if I get on your nerves, because a lot of those texts are from me, just going, hey, how you doing? Is there anything we can do to answer any questions or help you get connected? You can send stop. It'll hurt my feelings a little bit, but you can opt out at any time. It really is just something we're doing to get to know you. And I'm always in the lobby as well as our volunteers. If you have got any questions about the church or this morning in general, we'd love to answer that for you as well. Have a great Sunday, rest of your weekend. We look forward to seeing you here next week. Go in peace.